As we all know, Death Battle recently came out with Ghost Rider vs. Spawn and Kratos vs. Asura. However, I'm going to be going over the latter today. I'm going to try to keep this as concise as possible so I don't take up too much time. This isn't necessarily a debunk, it's more a review, because they got a lot wrong and lowballed both Kratos and Asura. Now, before I waste any more time, let's begin.
Neither Perseus or Hercules were a match for Kratos, nor was Helios, the sun god capable of moving stars and spreading light across the entire underworld.
I'm gonna mention that latter feat later, but why mention throwing stars of all things? Why not mention Nyx, who's far more impressive? For those who don't know, the nutshell version is basically Nyx is a primordial and Helios has to banish her. And this is far more impressive because since she's a primordial, she's as strong as Ernest, since a developer confirmed that all the primordials are supposedly as strong as one another. But I'll leave how valid that is up for debate.
Even his grandpappy Kronos failed to stop him. You know, the guy who overthrew the primordial that punched the universe into existence?
Causing shockwaves that moved over a quadrillion times faster than light, a frankly incomprehensible feat.
Then there's Daddy Zeus,
who proved a serious challenge, until Kratos drew perhaps his ultimate weapon, the Blade of Olympus.
3 things. First off, in addition to that feat, Kronos also created time in God of War, which would mean he has some control over it. 2. I'll touch on that primordial shockwave feat later, but I just want to put out there it's a massive lowball. And 3. While it is powerful, the Blade of Olympus is not Kratos' ultimate weapon. That belongs to the power of hope.
and could pull enough to even kill Zeus. Like father, like son.
That's not what happened. Right after what they're depicting, Zeus was still alive. He had enough energy to turn into Fear Zeus right after. Then Kratos had to pull out the power of hope in order to kill Zeus permanently. I'm bringing this up because this is not only a plot point, but they're also gonna overhype the Blade of Olympus by taking this feat out of context.
And Faye left the tools he'd need to keep the boy safe, including the Leviathan Axe.
Far from the whirling rage of the Blades of Chaos, the Leviathan Axe was deliberate and mighty, said to rival Mjolnir itself.
Thor wishes Mjolnir was as cool as this axe.
Since Death Battle isn't doing this, I'm gonna give insight on the Blades of Chaos. The Blades of Chaos are able to ignite in Helheim, which is something not even the hottest flame in all the 9 realms could do. And it's also confirmed to be even more powerful than the Leviathan Axe, which would in turn mean it's more powerful than Mjolnir.
Kratos' Spartan rage summons an inner strength with magical properties.
He can even get so pissed off that he straight up heals himself. That seems like the opposite of what should happen.
I will admit they got this part right, but it's a very limited healing factor. The most we've seen Kratos heal from is small wounds. If he loses a limb, it's very unlikely that he can recover from that. And he can have his healing factor when he's not in Spartan Rage, but he needs to actively heal. I'm pointing this out because I have seen some people try to say it's a Wolverine level healing factor, which is obviously not true from what we've seen.
Freyr, the rain god, held off Ragnarok for a considerable time on his own, and the sheer power of Ragnarok shook Yggdrasil down to its very roots.
That's the World Tree, which is like a literal tree that connects the whole universe.
Regarding the World Tree, I've done my own research on this. However, I've also heard mixed things from several different sources. So I'm just gonna take what Death Battle is saying at face value. Alright, let's see if they've got anything else.
Kratos made a lifetime of mistakes, but this future would be different. He'd be more than he was in the past, not just a god of war, but a leader, a father, and a defender, a god of hope.
Alright, Kratos is done. Now let's take a look and see what they've got for Asura.
By tapping into his wrath, Asura can take many forms for battle, like the 6-armed Vajra, a state powerful enough to subdue the embodiment of the planet's will and the source of the Goma, Vlitra.
But he wasn't angry enough to put Goma Vlitra down for good. At least not yet.
Like I did with the Blades, I want to bring up some information for Goma Vlitra. Vlitra is actually confirmed by Deus as well as a handful of other statements to have limitless power. This would mean he's a high universal being, and Asura being able to kill Vlitra would also put him at that tier, though granted that does come much later.
Asura was literally too angry to die, So long as a single part of his body remains and can possess mantra, he can climb back out of Naraka, a sort of limbo underworld between life and death. Thanks to some coaxing from a strange golden spider, he did just that.
Wiz, that is completely wrong. Asura is not reliant on a part of his body being left. He's reliant on the concept of mantra. This was stated by Chakravartin and then later supported by Mitra and shown to us when Asura dies. And this is especially baffling to me because they acknowledge this towards the end of the analysis. What's going on? I almost forgot, I'm also going to touch on the Naraka later, so keep it in mind.
Asura is so powerful, his soul cannot be manipulated by the Goma or the deities. He can propel himself with mantra to fly, harden his fists to break steel, fire explosive energy blasts,
And headbutt you so hard you wish you could die even faster. The dude literally stockpiles anger into a burst of energy that can one-shot even the toughest of foes. And when he goes unlimited mode, he can rapid-fire those super attacks without overheating.
Unlimited mode also grants Asura invulnerability to all physical attacks. You could say that Asura only has a short amount of time, but that's a gameplay mechanic. As shown in the fights with Yasha and then Chakravartin, Asura can be in this form as long as he wants to.
sparking Asura to unleash his berserker aura.
You know how the gods were sacrificing thousands of people to power up? Well, Asura got so freaking angry, he built up enough mantra to match them, even though they've been building up energy for thousands of years. Seriously, guys, you're pissing off the guy who literally gets more powerful the angrier he gets. What did you think was gonna happen?
Yet even in berserker mode, Asura never lost total control.
Berserker Asura adds even more extra arms, and they're big and glowy now. The man can launch so much angry mantra he wiped out the god's whole space fleet in seconds.
Asura's anger raised to levels so high even he couldn't contain it, scorching him into his wrath form.
On the topic of Asura's anger hurting him, there's a plot point that I'm gonna bring up at some point in the video regarding his anger, so keep it in mind. And I also want to mention something about his berserk mode. When Asura was in his berserker form, his soul was forced down into Naraka, which meant his body was acting completely on its own without thinking. For those who don't know what I'm saying, basically, Asura had Ultra Instinct before Goku did.
Enter the Mantra Reactor. Capable of holding 7 trillion souls, Asura instead used it as a vessel for a far greater power.
His own unfiltered rage. At last, Asura could show the world his real colors.
Everyone from the humans to the 7 deities to Chakravartin saw Asura's anger as a weapon, a sword for tyranny, when that was never who he was. His rage was really a shield to protect humanity, and most of all, his daughter.
A shield larger than a planet! Unbound by his past limits, Asura's ultimate destructor form effortlessly punched through asteroids larger than nebulas, dodged planet-sized lasers moving 2 quadrillion times faster than light, and obliterated whole stars!
I saw that pop up about the Mantra Reactor. I'm gonna come back to that soon, as well as the speed feat they presented for Asura. Let's wrap up.
Despite the dangers of uncontrolled anger, Asura's wrath gave him the power to save everything, all because of just one thing.
Some bastard made his daughter cry, so they had to pay. Now that's a god I can get behind.
Alright, Asura section is done. Let's go over the result and why they said the winner was Kratos.
Asura had some amazing displays of apocalyptic destruction, but the full scope of their speed, experience, versatility, and power sheds a surprising light.
At first glance, speed seems like a shoo-in for Asura.
You know the 4 categories they're doing, so I'm gonna skip right ahead to speed where they compare feats, for the sake of everyone's time.
And Kratos fought and killed Helios, the sun god.
From the moment he's introduced, Helios is emphasized to be immensely powerful. Without Helios, darkness would shroud everything. His light was fast enough to illuminate the entire underworld while Kratos sailed through it, taking a few hours at most.
So, kinda hard to quantify, but that's consistent with the shockwaves the primordials caused that spawned the universe.
Time to touch on some things from earlier. I didn't touch on the primordial feat all that much because it's a significant lowball. As Death Battle mentioned, Helios was able to illuminate the underworld. However, what they don't bring up is that the underworld is infinite in size, and yet Hermes in God of War 3 can dodge this beam while in a weakened state. And we know what happened to him. So this would technically be an infinite speed feat, which would get Kratos much higher than what they presented.
Arguments could be made for which is faster, the primordial shockwaves or Chakravartin's intergalactic lasers. Since it's so close, it's safest to assume their speeds are generally even.
Alright, I'm gonna touch on the Naraka like I said I would. Wiz did acknowledge it was a limbo beyond life and death. However, what he failed to know was that it's also an infinite-sized dimension, just like the underworld is upon the pillars being endlessly scattered. So regardless how you splice it, the Naraka would be an infinite-sized dimension as well, which would in turn also get Asura to infinite speed. However, there are arguments you could potentially take it higher, since there are metas placing Naraka as a higher realm, meaning we could get Asura to immeasurable speed. So, funny enough, when Boomstick says speed might be a shoo-in for Asura, he wasn't far off. Now for versatility, oh my gosh, they got so much wrong here. So I'm gonna break it up into individual parts.
Kratos' weapons, magic, runes, relics, and even his rage gave him far more options in combat, slowing down time, healing injuries, and most importantly, multiple weapons that could drain a variety of energies, like Mantra.
I saw that pop up. Asura was actually moving around in Chakravartin's time stop. If you watch the scene carefully, you can actually see Asura moving. The only reason he doesn't do more is because Chakravartin freezes and then unfreezes time too quickly before Asura gets a chance to do much else. So, no. Kratos' time slow actually would not do anything. Second, if you want to talk about healing factors, I already covered Kratos' and how it's more so accelerated healing, but Asura actually has a healing factor. Every time he transforms, he's able to heal himself. One pertinent example of this is when he goes berserk. Granted, that's still not quite Wolverine levels of regeneration, but it's better than Kratos. One can regrow limbs, the other can't. And lastly, no. The Blade of Olympus actually can't kill Asura, believe it or not. Mantra isn't just spiritual energy. The creators of Asura's Wrath actually confirmed the mantra of Wrath to be a concept, meaning that this is now an abstract concept. So, unless the Blade of Olympus has some form of conceptual manipulation, it's not affecting Asura's mantra, and it isn't killing him.
Yeah, when Asura loses all his mantra energy, that's it for him. So the Dropnir spears and the Blade of Olympus gave Kratos exactly what he needed: versatility.
We already talked about this, Boomstick. No, Asura doesn't need to have mantra in his body to come back. As long as Chakravartin is still alive and mantra still exists, he's going to come back whether his body has mantra or not. This is actually shown after he takes on the Goma army. Despite Asura being turned to stone and not having any mantra flowing through him, he manages to come back. The only weapon that could really negate Asura's type of immortality in God of War is the power of hope. But Norse Kratos doesn't have that. I don't know if I want to say he's a sitting duck, but he isn't putting Asura down for good.
And multiple ways to finish this for good before Asura just comes crawling back out of the underworld.
If he could, Asura's resurrections take years or whole centuries, days at best.
But all this assumes Kratos could match Asura's crazy strength.
I saw the pop-up. Let me give some context on that. The nutshell version is Yasha gave Asura the mantra reactor in order to avoid ripping his body apart like he previously did if he were to exert too much power. In the grand finale, they couldn't have had that, so the mantra reactor allows Asura to safely fight without the risk of tearing himself apart. Saying it harnesses the mantra isn't completely wrong, and if you want to use the mantra reactor harnessing Asura's power as a win point for Kratos, then you need to explain why that's the case. Now for power, they go over the world tree, which I already said I won't be talking about, and I will give them credit for not lowballing Asura to multi-galaxy level. However, there's evidence to get him higher than that. Chakravartin says that he will visit other worlds that he has created, and that could potentially mean that those worlds he's referring to are other universes and timelines, which essentially means there's a multiverse in Asura's Wrath. So you could get Asura to multiversal, if not multiversal plus.
It's easy to think that we never see Kratos do anything that matches Asura, but we do. Helios' speed matches Chakravartin, and Kratos outsped him. Atlas is strong enough to lift all of reality, and Kratos overpowered him. Kronos defeated the creator of the universe in a one-on-one fight, same as Asura, and Kratos killed Kronos. Add in the clear numerical comparison of Chakravartin, Ragnarok, and Yggdrasil, and Kratos takes the edge in power.
Ignoring the inconsistency, like I said earlier, you can get them equal in speed if you want to do an absolute minimum, but if you want to go higher, Asura would take the speed advantage, so he'd be faster by default whiz. Also, Chakravartin could technically do the same thing, as per his statement of holding everything in the palm of his hand. Also, I want to give a little reminder that just because two characters are the creators of their respective universes, that doesn't mean they'll be equal in power. But, in good faith, assuming Kratos does indeed take the power advantage, they also glossed over Asura's hacks, like a lot of his hacks. To be fair, they didn't go over all of Kratos' hacks either, but I digress. Let's wrap up.
As the sun rises, the god of wrath was Kratos.
The winner is Kratos.
Now that everything is covered, yes, I do disagree with the outcome, and yes, I do think Asura should have won. However, that's not the point of this video. The whole point was to make this a review and cover what Death Battle presented and what they got wrong for both sides. I will be honest, some points were concise and I didn't go too in depth about them, but that was on purpose. I wanted to keep this video short. As I've said before, this wasn't meant to be a thorough breakdown. It was supposed to be a concise and a quick review regarding both Kratos and Asura. Not to mention I was also going off of current knowledge regarding both characters. Now if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to comment down below what you would like to see from my channel going forward. And if you want to see me do a more objective and thorough debunk on this death battle, or even give my own take on Kratos versus Asura, and do a full breakdown, then by all means let me know down in the comments, and I will do it at a certain point going forward. My name is Ghost of Danny, and I thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.